The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Paranormal Concept right here on Parasearch UK Radio with your host, Paul Rook.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host, Paul Rook, and on tonight's show, we're going to be following up from the road trip conversation we had the other week. Tonight we've got joining us Kerry Greenaway as ever. Hello, Kerry.
Hello, how are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad indeed. How are you?
I'm alright, thank you. Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. Had a good week?
Tuesday, good, yeah.
I see you was late on the live feed. You did it this morning instead. That's terrible.
I know. I have my reasons that I'll talk to you probably about.
I'll slap your wrist to say
Oh dear. And then I thought it crashed and it didn't crash and it was like, oh, what the hell is going on with it?
Oh, well, at least it didn't crash. That was the main thing.
Well, it didn't, but you've got me going, it's crashed. Tech. Oh, God, I hate tech. You've got me going like that right at the end. It's like really professional.
Oh, awesome. Oh, dear. And we are also joined tonight by Carl Hutchinson. Hello, Carl.
Hello, Paul. Hello, Kerry.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right. Long day. Fun and games of driving a lot during the day. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm all right.
Good. Have you had a good week?
It's been well. I knew it was going to be a bad. Well, not a bad week, but I knew it was going to be because of the way the first couple 3 or 4 days that I had scheduled. I knew it was going to be a long and tough. So I'm barely awake. It's going to be a late night for me. Normally, last night I was in bed a long time before this because I've got to be up early tomorrow. So, no, everything's okay. Everything's good.
Good. So at 10 o'clock after the show, we're just going to go to bed. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes, probably what's going to happen. We're like, right, it's Tuesday. We've got to crash out. Yeah, too tired.
Yeah. So anyway, to follow up from our road trip show that we did the other week, Richard Clement, the station owner, and myself arranged a trip to Kelvedon Hatch for a very select few of the presenters because sadly we wasn't able to invite everybody, but hopefully that will change because we've got other ideas. So we myself, Richard Clements, Kerry and Cole all went off to Kelvedon Hatch. It was only for a few hours and we'd done a bit of filming, and we were going to hopefully put together a short video to go onto the group page so you can see what we was up to. But we got some really good, interesting results anyway. So, Kerry, when you turned up...
Yeah.
Eventually.
I was working. I would just like to point out, I wasn't deliberately late. I was working and then
And you got lost as well, and we had to direct you with the help of Mike from the Kelvedon Hatch Bunker.
Yeah.
That was quite a surreal moment when the phone in Kelvedon Hatch, because me and Paul had just sat down, Richard had gone off to the car park to try and direct Kerry, and the phone went off, and so it was a bit weird. So I went and answered it, and there's this bloke go, "Hello." I answered professionally, like, "Kelvedon Hatch, how can I help you?" And this guy went, are you missing 2 women? I went, yeah. And he went, they're on CCTV camera. And I went, where? He went, well, turn round and stop looking confused. They're on monitor 4. And I went, well, thinking, where's he coming from? Thinking he's hiding somewhere. But obviously, Kelvedon Hatch has got quite a few CCTV cameras.
Yeah.
Outside and inside. So you can't get away with anything there. And there was Kerry arrived, but she'd actually arrived at the cottage down below and not the actual entrance to the tunnels. Or the
I do like to make an entrance, everybody. They're lucky that we didn't go up to the cottage and start peering in the windows. And so we were stood out the front of the cottage going, well, where are they then? Where are they?
I think he set off motion sensors, alarms and whatever, because within seconds he knew exactly where you were. And he had cameras on you all the way until you eventually found the right entrance.
That was fun.
And then we were FaceTiming you on our journey to the right entrance. That must have been a bit weird too.
It was, yeah. It's like, oh, I know that bit. There's our cars.
Oh, look. Because the thing is, I'd already said that's Carl's car and Richard's car. Not at all. It wasn't their cars at all. Don't trust me to find your cars, guys, because I ain't got a clue, me.
You got the right model, you got the right make of car, but when I actually looked at the CCTV, it was like a 25-year-old Range Rover instead of my Range Rover.
Well, I don't know. I'm a girl. It's cars, right?
And it was red.
and all this happened before the investigation.
This is before we even started, yeah.
Yeah. You can tell sort of how the night went after that. So yeah, when you eventually got there, Kerry,
yes.
You went off on a wander.
Mm.
Do you want to just mention what you was doing at that point?
Well, because I don't work tech, I work energy-wise. I'm very spiritual when I work in the field, and I know people could be very critical of that, but that's just how I do it, right? Mm. So I went for my usual wander, and I like to do it on my own, just to sort of get my bearings and see what I feel with nobody talking or anything. And
that suits quite well. So many stairs, we was all knackered, and we wanted to break. We'll let you go off the road.
So I went off on my own and had a little look around. Now, I would like to point out that we had all the lights on, all the sound, audio, videos and everything that Kelvedon Hatch was on. So there's a lot of suggestion, auto-suggestion and audio suggestion, should I say. And it wasn't a traditional investigation, so we took no baseline tests or anything like that. We literally went into work how we work. And for me, because I haven't been out in the field for, a good 18 months, it was sort of like digging back in, it was like sort of like getting back into how I work. And so I had a good look around, and I picked up 3 different areas where I felt was good areas to work in. And one of those was the tunnel. One of those was that other room, wasn't it? That big room with all the computers in it.
Like office area type thing.
Yeah, in there.
Yeah.
And the other area was the sick bay.
The med bay, the sick bay, yeah.
It wasn't the bunk room that's in front of it. It was behind that. But I didn't actually go into the sick bay on my walk around. But I knew it wasn't there, but I knew it was behind there. If that makes sense. But I didn't realise there was the sick bay behind there. So anyway, that's what I kind of highlighted. So when I came back to the room, like the canteen room, and I kind of said, right, I know kind of where I want to sort of start doing our experimentations. And then off we poddled, didn't we?
We did. And we all trundled down to the basement level, because that's where we went for the tunnel, wasn't it, first? We thought we'd go start at the bottom and then work our way up.
Yeah, I would like to say, though, the whole of Kelvedon Hatch is actually very disorientating in itself, isn't it?
It is, especially they've since I was there last, they've changed all the routes. So I was used to going one particular way to get to these locations. But now they've got like a walkthrough, and you follow the arrows, and it literally goes round and in circles and back on yourself and back up the stairs and around again. And it is confusing, definitely.
One funny thing that did happen when I was doing my walk around all by myself to start with, there's a room that's got lots of telex machines in there. And it's none of them were working. And then I stepped into the room, then all of a sudden one started to work, which made me jump, right? And I went up to it and I was looking at this thing trundling away, doing whatever it's supposed to be doing. And I went, you know what would be more impressive? Was if you make them all work. And then walked away. Anybody watching me must have gone, she's a goddamn nutter. And they've got some really bad mannequins in there too, is all I'm going to say.
They have. Definitely.
So we went down to the tunnel to start with. Now, bearing in mind, we're on limited time on the investigation. The lights are still all on, so, we're not in pitch black. And as I say, you have got, like, audio going on, what you would experience if you was a tourist.
Yeah.
Yes, there's lots of videos and audios and stuff like that going on. But we are we have got the lights on, so it's not quite so bad. So, but we're aware of all this, and as investigators, you are aware of all this, so you're taking all this into consideration, aren't we, guys?
Yeah.
So, now, the other thing I would like to say is, although I'd never been to Kelvedon Hatch, I have heard a lot of people talk about Kelvedon Hatch. So, I can't say I'm completely unknowledgeable about the location. So, just because I'm sitting here saying I felt energy hits in 3 areas, you can't rule out the suggestion that I already knew that because I've listened to other people have experiences.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, people have experienced stuff all over the place. But I for one, have only experienced places in the 3 areas that you picked, to be fair. Everywhere else has been quite quiet. But I know investigators that have have had activity in the BBC room, where the BBC equipment is and stuff.
Well, where Margaret Thatcher.
No, that's the Prime Minister's room. People have had stuff in there as well, to be fair. So there are reports of all over the location, but I've only experienced the 3 areas that you picked. And I've investigated Kelvedon loads. Okay,
I'm just trying to put it out there, though, that I'm not going to sit here and go, wow, I was right. When I could have been subconsciously remembering or, stuff like that. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit on this. I know what I felt. I know what I did, but I can't prove that. Right? So I am trying to play rational as well as, that's how I work. So anyway, we get to the tunnel. Which was the first area I picked. Now, the tunnel is very interesting in itself. It's not flat. It isn't. It goes down a little bit and then up a little bit, and it's an uneven floor. Even though it's carpeted, the carpet itself is uneven. The lights are stationed sort of like spotlights down the side, so you've got light and dark bits as you go down it. And it's quite disorientating.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people have had experiences in that tunnel. Now, I walked that tunnel backwards and forwards, and I got an energy hit about I would say roughly around halfway down. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not at the end, not right at the end. It wasn't right at the end. It wasn't at the beginning. It was sort of roughly around halfway down the tunnel. Now, I'm not saying I picked up a spirit or anything like that. I didn't. I just got all I can say is like an energy hit. So something was going on there. So when we first got to the tunnel, Carl was trying out some tech as well, weren't you, honey?
Yeah, which I'll explain a bit in a while, because I was basically field testing a couple of bits of equipment. So I wasn't really investigating, like, so to speak. I was literally just testing some equipment just to see what I could get from it, because obviously it's the first time I was really using a bit of equipment. So I was just seeing what it was coming up with, see if there was anything interesting, see if I could see if there was any false positives or any drawbacks to the equipment. So I was giving it a good field test, basically.
Cool.
Yeah. So Richard got out his dowsing rods. And, he got out his dowsing rods and started to walk the tunnel. And when he got to the point where I felt that, I went, they're going to cross, and they crossed.
Mm.
And he went, how did you do that? And I went, because I felt it. And I can't explain it any more than that. I can't sit here and say I'm channeling or anything stupid like that. I can't. All I can say is I felt it. And it was where I'd picked up the energy hit before. So I say I'm not naming it. I'm not saying it's an entity. I don't think it is at that point. But he then carried on walking. They uncrossed. And it was the only time on the way up the tunnel and back down the tunnel where the dowsing rods crossed was at that point. Which was at that point that I'd had that experience, and I still called it when he was working with them. Now, that's interesting. So he said, why do I think that is? And I said, I think geologically there's something there. So you need to look external. So there's either water, like a brook that crosses at that point, or a pond, or possibly something with a high EMF. There's something there that will trigger the dowsing rods. That's what I think is there at that point. Now, when we've looked into it a little bit since, and unless we walk it, it doesn't look like there is anything like that there. Does there? We had a look on the Google Maps and stuff like that. It's very tricky to see. It's not very easy. So we would actually have to go and walk it to see if there is anything along that line, as it were. But that, I think there's something like that there. I'm, in my opinion, I don't think there's anything there, but there's something interesting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing about it is everybody talks about Kelvedon Hatch being a Faraday cage. When you go into the tunnel area, you go through the blast doors.
Yeah.
You're basically then outside of the Faraday cage of the main complex. So this is basically a tunnel which leads from the bunker to the bungalow down below the down below from where you first come in. It's down the hill directly in front of it. We're actually outside of the Faraday, which obviously you are then going to start picking up on more interesting environmental changes in that particular tunnel.
Mm-hmm. Now, we aren't working with any other tech. I'm going to put that out there. We didn't have any other tech apart from the piece of tech that Carl was road testing on the night. That wasn't really the point of the night. It was just a see what happens kind of night, wasn't it? And
it was.
But that was interesting, but it was also very, very interesting to note is the psychological impact of just the layout of that tunnel and how disorientating that was. Now, who was it? Was it Penny that said that it was designed specifically to be disorientating? Because if in the event a nuclear situation had happened, then it was designed specifically to be that disorientating. So they had a chance to hold back the masses, as it were, if they'd broken through into the tunnel. But I don't know. I mean, she's more the historian than I am on that one. But, you know, I just found it was very, very interesting that the reaction from the dowsing rods at that time in the spot I'd picked up on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would be interested to see, obviously, looking from the outside of where you go into the main bunker, which is obviously above the cottage, and you look down, it's just literally a side going down and then into that. So potentially you're saying, is there potential water there? It could be natural water retention in the earth that could have been causing it. Because I don't know exactly how the tunnel is made up, how much concrete is used, etc., and all that sort of, how thick it is. So potentially, if there's a pool of water, natural pool of water above it, potentially that could be causing the dowsing rods to cross.
See, that could be quite plausible, because we was talking to the guy who owns the bunker, and he said that when they made the bunker, they literally cut away the hill, built it, and then put all the spoils back over it. So it's quite plausible. I mean, if you've got like a collection of rocks or something above that tunnel, then water could drain through the soil and collect above the tunnel.
Yeah, that's
so again, it's quite.
But I know, because I don't know whereabouts it is, and probably somebody who's done a little bit more research on the design of it. I know we watched the video for about 8 times when we were waiting for it.
Yeah.
But he mentioned that there was a reservoir that they kept for water for using in emergency. Once that had gone, you would then use the natural reservoir. So I'm just wondering whereabouts that natural reservoir would be. It's obviously got to be above, so obviously it can go into the tunnel, because obviously if they're not pumping it or whatever. So there is a natural reservoir somewhere, because they mentioned that on the video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would presume that would be above it.
Mm.
I wouldn't say it would be down below, because obviously the logistics of getting into that reservoir would be.
Yeah.
It needs to be up. Needs to be like nearer the ground level.
I don't know myself, but that's my opinion on what's there. I'm pretty sure. Now, I'm going to admit again, before I went in, having listened to other people's experiences, I had a theory anyway about what it was at Kelvedon Hatch that people were experiencing, because you get a whole range of experiences there. And I don't think I in my head before I went, I was pretty sure that what people do experience is more elemental than spirit. And if there are spirits there, they're not there. They're what people have brought in. Spirits that have come along with the people that have are investigating. But we then went on, and we went to the main office area, like where the computers are, and this is where I set up a crystal grid, and I did my weird thing, and they were all giggling and laughing.
It was just funny, pacing up and down the empty space. Yeah, it was quite amusing to watch, really.
It might be amusing to watch, but there is method to my madness, and you've got to find the right spot. There's no point. You can set it up anywhere, but if you want to get the best results, you've got to pick the best spot, as it were. So for me, working energetically, that's the whole point of why I was doing that. And I was doing pendulum work, and then I found the spot, and I was like, right, okay, we're going to do it here. So I set up a crystal grid. I used an amethyst organite pyramid in the middle, and I surrounded that with amethyst points, quartz points. And it's very simple, a very simple grid, nothing horrendously complicated on this occasion. And then we attempted a Ouija board, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. We did. It was only yourself and Richard Clements that done the board.
Yeah.
Because I videoed it. Cole's still testing his kit.
Mm-hmm.
And was you recording the whole thing as well? Or
yeah. What I'll do now is I'll just explain the bit of equipment I was road testing.
Yeah.
I basically was asked to. I get asked now and again to road test or field test bits of equipment, and I've been quite lucky that I basically have been using or field testing. And one of these particular bits of equipment that I was asked to field test was the digital dowsing XCAM Deluxe SLS camera. So obviously SLS is the light camera system that you've seen, or as Kerry calls it, the stickman thingy.
Yay.
But it's a structural light sensor camera. But the difference between that and some of the other models that are out there on there is the software it uses to look at what you're picking up. Majority of the ones that you can buy in open market are that use the software, are using the software around the Kinetic system or the Xbox. And that does have quite a few drawbacks, because I've tested a few of those cameras where it will try and map It will look at the environment that you're pointing at and potentially map in a false positive, i.e. a chair and a lamp. It will then map. The difference with the digital dowsing camera that I was field testing is that it has various different other sensors. It has ultrasonic distance detection, which basically means it sends out a pulse. So it's a bit like a sonar. So you can basically get an idea of what's going on. It has thermal temperature sensors, and it has a light frequency sensor. So basically it will look at the different types of light coming into the camera. The other thing that it uses, it doesn't use the kinetic software on the tablet, which is the biggest key. What Bill Chappell has designed is a software which basically it looks at the environmental conditions and also the makeup of the room, which I was showing Kerry and I showed Paul at the time. When you pointed at things, you can clearly see what you're pointing it at. And it doesn't then map in. It's looking for certain parameters that will then structure in the stick map. What I was testing on initially was in the tunnel was I was looking for heat signatures. So I was basically looking, and what it does, it will map a heat signature in various different colours. If there was, say, just the one heat signature, like one person standing in front of it, it will then become either red, yellow, green, depending on whichever colour. And then you will basically map the stick man inside the person it's pointed at.
Yeah.
You can see chairs, you can see tables, and I did point out when we were walking down the corridor or the tunnel, there was a chair at the far end with like a stand, which had, I think, a bucket, which was like a fire extinguishing bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said to her, if that was the kinetic system, you would pick something up, you would have a stick man because it's the shape of like a head and shoulders. This camera does not do that. The only time it will map in something will normally be mapping. You don't really get that many hits on it because I tested it in 3 different locations where we were there, and you weren't getting any of these, as I described it, little stick man standing on your shoulder doing a jig. And I showed you, Kerry, didn't I?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And I was showing you that basically I was pointing at Paul and I think I was pointing at Richard, and they were mapping in the 2 different heat signatures because that's what I had it on, the setting I had it on, and you could clearly see that was Paul, that was Richard, and Stickman stayed perfectly inside the colour. It didn't even didn't come out at all, slightly.
No, it didn't.
And the good thing about that is it can take out some of the things that the kinetic system does when it's reading in false positives, i.e. a chair, a lamp or whatever, or wallpaper or environment. But the reason I like, just by this 2.5-3 hour test I did on it, I like the way it does the environmental. So it will show you the moisture, it will show you the humidity, it will show you the sound levels, the light sensors, it will show you the EMF levels. It shows you literally everything in a data form grid next to you where you're looking at. Yeah. Which I can then record up to 10 minutes off at a time. But then but it also stores all the data on the tablet because it's a PC tablet. So you can download it straight into a PC and into the software that you get given with the thing. So you can download what you've got and then you can analyse it. You can then put it through, say, if you were looking at a movement, you can put it through a grid system where you can see whether it was close, further away, the movement, the trajectory, etc., etc. So that's what I was testing.
Okay, so we've got this going whilst we're doing the Ouija board experiment. Now, when we first went on the board, there's only myself and Richard Clements, and it was moving really slowly, not getting anything major on it. We weren't asking questions. We were just sitting there and I'm obviously concentrating. This is in the grid formation, grid area. And So I went, right, Richard, and nothing much was coming through. So I was like, right, let's try an experiment here. I said, I want you to take a memory where you was really scared, where you were really fearful, a bad memory, something horrible. And he did. And I said, right, okay, let's go back on the board. And we had a much stronger reaction on the board. Nothing, no words or anything were coming out, but we had a stronger reaction on the board. And I said, right, okay, come off that. Flip it. Think of a really good memory, something that makes you really happy, something where you had no cares, no worries, that it was a perfect moment of happiness. So he's, okay, so he's got that. And we had a very strong reaction on the Ouija board. And that led us down the talk or discussion. We then went into a discussion about how you, as a person, can influence what comes out on the board. What is interesting, and I'm not discounting Ouija boards and saying it's all from us, I think that's part of it. But with all spiritual work, it comes from you. That's the initial perspective. It all comes through you, whether you're channeling it through you, whether you're drawing it from the environment, it all comes from you, whatever your understanding of that world is. And I wanted to show effectively how you can affect something like that. Now, that doesn't take spirit out of the equation. What it does is it maybe they work through you to bring what comes out on the board. But we had no discernible words or anything like that. But the reaction of the push on the board, as it were, I'm not pushing it, but you know what I mean, the movement of the planchette was very distinctively different. And then we went into positive and negative and talked like that. While that was all going on, we had this system on the go. And some things were very interesting, Carl. Do you want to tell us about the interesting...
Yeah, because obviously there was Richard, there was Kerry sat on the floor, there was Paul a little way, he was filming from his camera, and then there was Daisy across the way. So I had everybody in shot. But I was basically focusing on the crystal grid that you'd set up with that pyramid thing. Mm-hmm. And every time you went anywhere near the pyramid, which was right next to the Ouija board, it mapped heat. But it didn't map heat from yourself. It also mapped heat from the pyramid. So every time you went anywhere near the grid, the camera picked up on the heat, but it was a stronger heat than what the heat that you were picking up from. So your body heat was one colour, but every time you went anywhere near the other one, the crystal, it picked up the heat was a stronger heat coming from the crystal. Mm-hmm. That was obviously hotter than you.
Yeah.
It did. It was obviously because of the settings I was using. Everybody else basically stayed their core temperatures stayed the same. Didn't rise, didn't think, because it didn't matter because I was looking at fluctuations. So I was looking at rise and fall in body temperature on the structural camera. And every time you went close to the crystal grid, the heat there went up. Mm-hmm. But
now, I'm not touching the crystal.
That's what I was going to say. You didn't touch it.
Yeah.
Because I know people will say, well, of course, it's going to go up because if you touch it, your heat is going to make it go up in heat.
Yeah. But I wasn't touching it.
You weren't touching it.
Now I just want to just explain with the crystals where they were I have a flight case where I keep all my crystals in. They've been in the back of the car. They then got from the car, carried around the location in the box. The only time I touched those crystals was when I was taking them out of the box to lay them on the crystal grid. The crystal grid's on the floor. None of the other crystals surrounding the pyramid were lighting up in the same way, so it's not coming through the floor. It was only the orgonite pyramid.
Yeah. And it was quite interesting. And literally every time you leant forward or you leant sort of further into shot, and you got closer to this pyramid, it became the heat became stronger. So it was rising in temperature. I have to go through all the actual physical data because you pinpoint things to get like the overall heat. The thing was, the environment around it was a standard. It was a normal. There wasn't any fluctuations around it. Even where people were sitting, it was where the other crystals were. There was no fluctuation in heat. So if you're saying body heat transfers, you're heating up the environment, it should rise. It didn't.
What sort of variation are we talking? Are we talking like only a couple of degrees? Or
No. This is basically, it takes a baseline reading of the environment. You pinpoint it, you put a cross on where you're pointing it at. So you pinpoint it. It will take an average temperature. And then if there's any fall or rise, I need to double check what the baseline reading was because obviously I haven't had a chance to actually download the information from the system yet. But we're talking, I think it was set at 5 degrees.
Right. Okay.
Drop and fall.
So that's still quite a significant one, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
But it was.
so we've got another question as well on this. Can it be rigged to record longer periods of time?
No, sadly not. You can only record on the deluxe SLS camera XCam for 10 minutes. But you can record the data for long periods of time, but you can't record the images.
Okay.
Because it basically goes onto the tablet, and obviously it's recording at quite a high resolution, so it's quite a memory thing. I think there is possibility where if you ran it straight from the camera into, say, like a PC, you possibly then could record longer. But I haven't really, because it was my first field test of it, and I wanted to just field test the actual bit of kit as it's because it's a mobile bit, gun grip and stuff like that. But one thing you noticed was how stable the image was.
Yeah.
Because it has stabilizers in it, which I didn't realise until I read about it. The actual where the lenses of the cameras has 2 stabilizers, a bit like a gimbal. So if you move it, it stays relatively still. So your picture stays relatively still.
It's definitely a fascinating piece of kit in regards to some of the footage I've seen regarding SLSs. It was totally different from what I was expecting. Bearing in mind, I've never seen one in the flesh, as it were, but I've watched a lot of people playing with an SLS. This was totally different from.
Well, that's what I've always been put off with the SLS and the Connect system because it isn't, in my opinion, advanced enough. But this new system's come along, is a step in the right direction. Yeah. You know, there might. I mean, once Carl's field tested it, you know, he might come up with a few other points.
Well, I think one of the things that I noticed straight away was the weight. It's one heavy bit of equipment. So I'm hoping down the line, somewhere like when they do the next generations of these things, that they look at the weight because you carry that around handheld. So what I'm thinking about doing is putting it on a tripod or like some sort of setup, so you can with wheels, so you can wheel it. So it's still mobile enough. But you're taking that weight out of your hand, and
that's it. I mean, you're
taking that human movement if you've got it on a fixed tripod.
Yeah, I mean it's still in early stages as well, isn't it, of development.
They've been using it.
It's the same as anything. The mobile phones. I mean, look at the size of them when they first come out. Exactly. They were like 5 house bricks taped together.
Yeah.
It's still very, very compact.
Yeah,
there's obviously so much gubbins inside it, and obviously the weight of the tablet, the weight of everything else, and obviously you're only using it off a pistol, so it's slightly top heavy, so you've got to make sure you're pointing it. And one thing you've got to remember is because of the way the SLS camera works, it reverses it on screen. So if you're looking at it, left is right, right is left, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you've got to be careful of, because I've seen people using it, and they're looking at the wrong place where it's pointing when it's actually looking at because it reverses it because of the way it goes into the camera.
Yeah.
You also had an issue with the battery, didn't you, or something like that?
Yeah, after because it should do the battery on the SLS, the XCam should last a lot longer than, because we were only in there. I was only using it probably for about 2 hours.
Yeah. I didn't get there till 8 and we were finished by 10:30.
Yeah. So, and the battery drain on, particularly on the tablet, and the tablet should have lasted a lot longer than it did. That just went. And then I had issues with the actual recharger, because it uses rechargeable lithium batteries. And they drained like nobody's business, because at the end I literally was thinking, thank God it's rechargeable, because the amount of batteries it takes, it costs a fortune to run this bit of equipment. So that was quite interesting. There was severe battery drain,
and that was going on whilst we were doing the spiritual experiments, weren't they?
Do you think it would be the spiritual explanation, or do you think maybe that it could be a design flaw with that system?
No, because I've seen it being used by other people. You've been using it, and they've used it for a lot longer than I've been using it.
Okay.
So potentially, yeah, they probably need to look at possibly replacing the rechargeable batteries and possibly using battery packs or power banks to do that. But then again, that adds to the weight.
Yeah.
So you think a couple of power banks is going to add to the weight. So there are things that I looked at it and I'm thinking, yeah, you could design it slightly differently, change the shape slightly to make it more easy to use. But overall, the software, which is the most important thing, because it's not using the Kinect software, it's using this other software, that I thought was very, very impressive, because you don't get ultrasonic sensors, you don't get thermal sensors, you don't get all these other environmental settings like moisture, humidity, all these sort of things. You don't get any of that with the Kinect system. So you've got a lot more. Probably Ashley's probably wet his undies at the moment.
He's going, data is all I'm interested in. Could probably upgrade the SSD to give it more recording time. He's all over this.
That was the more interesting thing. That records for a lot longer. It's only the video, as in what you're pointing it at, to see whether the little stickman appears. But we didn't have any anomalies, such as the stickman on people's shoulders. I tried to point it at things which I knew would give false positive using the Kinect system, and it wasn't even batting an eyelid.
It wasn't, was it?
It was, in one of the rooms we had, there was a mannequin standing literally there. It didn't pick up on the mannequin. You could clearly see it was a mannequin.
Yeah.
You could clearly see coat hangers where the fancy dress, where you can dress up. Nothing. It wasn't. We didn't have any little stickmans like jumping on people's shoulders, dancing, which potentially could have been something behind them. There wasn't any of that.
No.
Which I thought was very. I thought that was good, because I was expecting it to have little green men. Not little green men. That's the wrong show.
That's the Dark Mirror.
Little stickman peering on your shoulders or having a little jig in front of you or whatever. It wasn't doing any of that. It was more of the environmental changes around what it was being pointed at, which I found more interesting.
It was interesting, definitely seeing that piece of kit in action. It was, well, I did actually find that fascinating, to be fair. Then we did a scrying experiment with myself and Richard again. I've got a fantastic black obsidian scrying mirror, and we had that just on the floor between us. and trying to talk someone through scrying is quite an interesting and intense experience. And although we didn't get any impressions well, I did, but Richard was the focus, obviously, trying to get him to work. He was getting like a real big pressure on his left eye, wasn't he, while we were doing that? And it was showing, for me, if I was as a teacher in this way, it was showing that he's starting to access the right side of his brain, because your right side controls your left and your left controls your right. So it's accessing his the other side of his brain where it comes from, but he wasn't getting any impressions. He got some visual, what's the word? What you would expect from an eye trying to focus on a scrying mirror that when you're not used to it. It's like when you focus on one spot and your eyes adjust in certain ways, and that is like, you could see the scrying glass jumping around at one point, and then it seemed to get bigger and smaller, but that's natural eye adjustments. But it was interesting that he was getting this pressure on his left eye. For myself, what I got was a tree, an oak tree, and and everything I was getting whilst I was down Kelvedon Hatch kind of backs up my theory. But I will reiterate this: I already had that theory before I went in there. So somebody could argue you're biased, or you're pre-biased before you've already gone into the location. I'll take that, but it's what I was experiencing at the time. Anyway, we then walked on and we went to the air filtration system area, which again is outside the Faraday cage. And again, you had something very interesting on this system, didn't you?
Yeah, because I was obviously, I thought I'd try and, I was trying to look at things that I could possibly try and trick it to look at. So I was looking for shiny surfaces. I was looking for things on this system that would try and trick the light sensor camera to give me something back, which is like a false positive. But it wasn't having any of it. Anywhere I pointed it at, anything that potentially could look like a human shape, it wasn't having any of it. Mm-hmm. It was just telling me the temperature. It was telling me everything, the light, the amount of light that was in the area, etc., etc. So I'm thinking, okay, fair enough. So I was just leant on the barrier, and I had it pointed at a duct going into the air filtration centre. And obviously, like I said, it's reverse, so left is right, right is left. And then all of a sudden, it picked up on a heat temperature. Like if I pointed at a human, it would then turn one of its bright colours. Mm-hmm. And it turned red. And it was behind, but it wasn't the duct that was thing. It was behind the duct, lit up in red, and it was saying tracing or tracking. So it was trying to track something that was behind the duct that was producing a heat. So it was trying to look, and the only time it does that is when it's obviously when you've got a person standing in front of it.
Or could I ask a question here at that point, because I'd gone off with Richard at this point. Could it have been like a rat or a mouse or?
No, you would be able to see it, clearly see it.
Okay.
No, it was quite high up as well, wasn't it? Yeah. It wasn't on the floor level.
It wasn't actually. Well, it could have been. It could have been a rat, but I would say because of how small rats are, it wasn't a small heat signature. It was mapping. Right. It was mapping quite a big area behind, and when you look at it, because obviously the lights were on, when you looked at it with your own eyes, where it was mapping it would have been in the air. Unless you had a floating rat.
Okay, I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, so you had a rat running down a conduit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But where it was trying to map was directly behind this like pipe that was like a U shape that went into the wall and then into the air filtration system. And behind it, it was mapping a heat signature behind it. Mm. So I'm like looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, so I'm like looking at it with my own eyes, looking at the sensors, and it was mapping it. And the interesting thing is, when you put a human in front of it, it goes tracking, and then obviously it then basically picks up on the human because you can see the human shape, and then you get the heat signature of what colour it is, whatever, depending how many actual is in front of it. But this was trying to map something, and then all of a sudden, we're not talking a full stickman thingy. It was sort of half a stickman, tracked for a few seconds, and then disappeared. But the heat signature was there. Then the heat signature just disappeared.
Yeah, it wasn't there for long.
No. We're talking, but yeah.
Ashley wanted to know how far away from the area were we. So it wasn't that far, was it? Really, it was.
I was probably about, between the two big air filtration, the full filtration units. There's like a walkway.
Yeah.
So I was leaning on the walkway, the barrier of the walkway. So I probably was about 5 foot away from the air filtration duct.
Mm.
And whatever it was about 8
feet behind. Yeah, possibly 8. Yeah, probably just behind the actual pipe that was going. But you could see the pipe, so it wasn't the heat from the pipe. It was behind the pipe, so you could see the pipe was a certain colour, certain temperature, but the heat that it was picking up, like when it goes bright red or bright green, depending on what it is, those colours don't really mean anything. It just means it's tracking something. But it was behind it.
Yeah, and there's nothing there but a concrete wall.
Concrete wall.
So there wouldn't be. I don't think there'll be any reflection from us.
No. Well, I tried that. When.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah.
You stood next to it, and you stood there. You walked away. Nothing. There was a little bit of heat residue where you'd been leaning on the barrier, but nothing. And I was trying to trick it. I was looking for shiny things. Shiny things, so you're basically picking up on that reflection of your own heat that it's picking up. But it wasn't doing any of that.
It was definitely well tested that night.
Yeah. Whilst that was going on in that area, Richard had gone out and he'd heard 2 knocks up a stairwell that you're not allowed up. It's a blocked off stairwell. We think it's just like an escape route type stairwell. He'd heard 2 different knocks as he walked past it, and he asked me to come and have a look to see if I could feel anything there. I couldn't, but there was no, and we stood there for a good 5 minutes quiet, and there was, even though we've got audio going on, you can hear the audio from the other rooms and stuff going on, there was nothing that would have made that same noise. And from what we could see up the stairwell, there was nothing that should have made that noise either. So we don't know quite what that was, but it didn't reoccur. He just heard 2 knocks.
It'd be interesting to see if we could get some like schematics of where we were, and see where those stairs actually go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was no wind or breezes or anything that could have caused something to knock. I mean, God, we're in a nuclear bunker. There's none of that.
I've got a feeling those stairs go up to where the canteen is.
Is that what you think?
Because there's a back door. Yeah, there is a back door to the canteen, and I'm sure that's one of the escape routes. So you can go up them stairs into the canteen and out if you ever need to escape. There is another ladder system as well that comes out somewhere else, but I can't remember.
Yeah, but that happened. So we got nothing on camera or anything to do with that one. It was a personal experience that Richard had. I went out, couldn't feel anything, energy-wise, different. And we stood there for probably a good 5 minutes to see if it was natural, or if there was anything that could have made that noise. And it didn't reoccur. We didn't hear anything. We were looking for breezes or anything that could have been knocking, or whether or not it was something off the audio. That was, not in that specific area, but in other rooms you could still hear it. Bits and bobs going off, but nothing was making that noise. It's just interesting to note. Okay, and then we went up to the medical bay, or what they say is now the medical bay.
I personally don't think it was a medical bay. I think it was just a reenactment of potentially there would have been a room that sort of stuff would have been in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean...
It didn't look like it should have been in that area.
No.
Between two bunk rooms.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think if there was going to be a medical bay in that tunnel system, it would be right at the bottom where there's easy access in and out.
We don't know.
Maybe Penny knows. If she's done the history in the place, maybe Penny knows about whereabouts the actual medical bay was. Because Drakelow Tunnels, similar thing, northern base. They've obviously got a medical area, and it's been documented. So obviously they must have some sort of plans, because it's obviously okay. Yes, it was never used, but they must have had something set up just in case.
When Mike took over the bunker, the Home Office had emptied the whole place, so they would probably be only guessing where all this equipment would be going.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway,
I don't think
it's a room which has got basically set up like a medical bay, and then you've got like a bunk room behind it. And people have had experiences in this bunk room too. Now, I went and sat on one of the bunks. I did my Wonder Woman thing, climbed up on top of the bunks. And we were just having general conversation at this time, weren't we?
Yeah.
And Paul went, so which bunk was it that people have had experiences? And I was like, it's that one. I can't prove this unless I took somebody who'd actually had that experience. But I think I can pinpoint which bunk it is. I don't think it's a spirit in there. I think it is what I thought it was before I went in there. But, as I say, it's difficult for me because I can play devil's advocate as much as I like on this, but I know what my impressions are when I'm in a place. And I know how these kind of spirits react. And they'll appear as they expect to be appeared. They will appear as somebody expects them to appear. So if you expect a military person, it will appear as a military person. If you're expecting to see a doctor, for example, it will appear as a doctor. If you expect to see it as a dark entity, shadow shape, it will appear as that. You know, and that's how these kind of spirits are, you know, that's how they will work. What is interesting, which I found out since, is, and this actually links into my blog that I wrote recently, is that there are a lot of Roman ruins, or they've uncovered a lot of Roman pottery. So we know Romans were in that area quite a lot. And we know that they would worship a genius loci, or a tutelary spirit.
Yeah.
And it could be that is what this is.
I totally agree.
It's just my opinion. But I found the whole thing absolutely interesting. It was fantastic actually getting back out in the field after being so long out of the field. Great location, loved it. I bet it's dead creepy when all the lights and all the video, audio and all that crap is off. I bet it's dead creepy. It's pitch black.
As I said to you that night, once all the power's off,
I
haven't got any of the audio, that place takes on a different feeling.
Yeah.
Because obviously it is really dark down there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that they've got creepy mannequins. It doesn't help that basically it's very disorientated, because it's like you're going in places and through doors, down steps, upstairs, and then all of a sudden you seem to be on the same level, but you thought you went down some stairs to get to it. Yeah. And then you come out another way and you're on the same level as the stairs going down, but you never went back up some stairs. So it's very disorientated, but it does take on a different feel. But that's also comes down, that will also play to your mind anyway, because of how dark it is, and your mind is going to go, this is creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. But it is a great location. I would definitely, you know, we've talked about going back and doing a bit more of an in-depth investigation, doing baseline tests, using more tech, you know what I mean, and setting up in various areas. We've talked about doing a little bit more in-depth. Say we was only there for a short period of time. And we kind of ran out of time, didn't we, guys, really?
We did, yeah.
Which, you know, but we got it dead quick. Got to thank Mike, is it?
Yeah, Mike Parrish.
Yeah, we've got to thank Mike for that, for allowing us to have that access to the location. And we got some interesting interesting. I'm not going to say paranormal or anything like that. We got some interesting stuff happen. And, you know, what more could you want, really?
It just goes to prove that you don't have to go to places. I mean, we started quite early on in the evening as well. You see, you don't have to go to places like 8 till midnight or 8 till 3 in the morning just to have these experiences. You can go anytime.
Yeah, you don't.
You don't have all the lights off. You don't have to have that.
Okay, if you were doing different experience where you were listening for anything auditory, etc., or on camera, potentially you would need to look at the auditory that comes through playback. But nothing that was actually happening that was which was like on the tour that you have with the sounds really affected what we were doing.
No. We was literally.
You heard it sort of after a while. You got used to it, but then you also anything that did sound strange, which obviously Richard did with these noises.
Yeah.
You then pick up on that because you're sort of blending out what you know we sound because we're in areas for a period of time, so you're hearing the noises of that particular room. Mm-hmm. So if you hear something that's out of the norm, you pick up on it.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, we all acknowledge there was a lot of psychological factors in there because obviously you've got it all set up as it should have been. You've got we had a lot of audio suggestion going on in there. It was disorientating. We all picked up on those factors while we were in there. The claustrophobia of the place, you know, we all acknowledged those basic factors of the location before we even sort of started. But we're all, I would say, seasoned enough to sort of acknowledge them and know that could be a factor, you know, in what we were experiencing. Thoroughly interesting night. I have to say I really did enjoy it. I can't deny that. I really had a good time. And yeah, I think it showed that sometimes it's good to get out back in the field and...
Yeah, I'm looking forward to field testing this camera again in another location. It looks like
I'm working on another location, so
looks like I've got it for an extended period because.
Excellent.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to really getting that and playing around with the different functions. Look at the different environment settings you can play with. Which then obviously with the added bonus of the structure of the SLS camera bit.
Yeah,
excellent. And on that note, we've come to the end of the show. It goes really quick. I think we need to extend this show for 2 hours.
But not when we do astrology.
Okay. We'll move into astrology next week. That's fine. Yeah. So what we got coming up for the next week, Kerry?
For next week, for the Paranormal Concept
show?
Well,
the rest of the week, yeah.
Right. Okay, for the rest of this week, tomorrow evening on Haunted Histories, Penny is in the studio with the lovely Barry Guy talking all about the Hellfire Caves. Again, what a fantastic location that one is. Oh, I love the Hellfire Caves, I'm not going to lie. It's one of my faves, in all honesty. But I'm sure we'll catch up with everything that Barry's been up to. He's got new TV series coming out, and so I'm sure we'll get to hear all about that too. Then on PSH Radio this week, Carl and Sam are back in the studio talking to Greg Chandler from Fright Night Surrey, all about everything they get up to and some of the locations they investigate there. Then on the Dark Mirror Show on Friday night, Mayhem enters the studio again with myself, Mark, and Carl is back with us again. God, 3 shows a week this week, Carl.
Yeah.
I need to do all 5.
Yeah. Is that a life goal?
Not really. Everybody can dream.
Anyway, on Friday, we're talking all about celebrity ghosts. That's what we're talking about this week. We're going pure fluff and fun this Friday.
Where to see St. James Dean, where to see Elvis, I don't know what I don't know what rabbit hole we're going to end up going down on that.
But it is your usual Friday night of fun and frolics on Parasearch Radio. And then on next week on the Paranormal Concept Show, we are talking about something that's a little different. We're talking about Anastasia, possibly.
What the singer?
No.
I was going to say, if you got her on, I might come back on.
No, we're talking about the Russian princess, Anastasia, and all about Rasputin. That's where we're going.
Yeah, that's it. Very mysterious subject.
We're going to be looking into the deep, dark depths of Russian history. God, who chose this one? Is all I'm going to say. Where the hell did this topic come from?
It's quite current because obviously there's a film that's just coming out about Alexander the Great, about the Russian monarchy and all that sort of stuff. It's quite.
We could talk about how Anastasia's been kidnapped by aliens.
No.
I don't think she's been kidnapped by aliens. Now, if we were talking about that on the Friday, now there's a possibility, right?
So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for joining us in the chat room. Fantastic having you there as always. Thank you, Cole, for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
Been a pleasure. And thank you, Kerry. So it's good night from me.
And it's good night from me.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.